A meal and a walk. The feeding of the 5,000 is the only miracle, other than the resurrection, that's mentioned in all four Gospels. There is a traditional place in Israel where this could have taken place. There's actually a couple of them. When we go, we like to take them to a place near Magdala, where Mary Magdalene was from. And we like to remember that story at that location. When you go there, there's the Valley of the Doves that goes up into the hills. Now remember, the Sea of Galilee is 600 feet below sea level. And so the Valley of the Doves is actually taking you up to sea level. We like to go here because the Scripture seems to indicate that the feeding of the 5,000 happens on the plain. But another gospel says that they went up a mountain. Well, at this spot right here, you can do both. You go up the Valley of the Doves to a plain. So you're going up a mountain to a plain. A beautiful flat spot where 5,000 people easily could be. Now at that place, Jesus, when they were going to make him king, sends them away. So they go back down the Valley of the Doves. He then sends the disciples back by the way of sea. Now you have to recall, they're actually walking and sailing parallel. The people are walking along the shore. The disciples are sailing parallel out at sea, just going right up the coast. The storm comes down the Valley of the Doves, which it often does. It says that Jesus went on up the mountain. Well, that is Mount Arbel. You go on up. He's actually above the storm. The storm comes down the Valley of the Doves, and he's up above. It says that he was up there watching them. You could do that there. The storm is, of course, the people are just walking through the rain and the storm, but the waves are pushing the boat out to sea. They don't want to be out in the middle of the sea. So then Jesus, from where he's at on top of Mount Arbel, walks down the cliffs and walks across the water. It's a beautiful place to go and to see the entire story. As you're hearing the story, you can actually look out there and see everything. The valley, Mount Arbel, the coastline, the sea, it's all there. We think that the boy with the lunch was actually poor because he had barley loaves. The more wealthy would have wheat bread, but he had barley bread. It says that Jesus took the food and he gave thanks and he broke it, gave the disciples. This was a tradition in the Jewish people. They would always, before a meal, give this particular prayer of thanks. But I imagine Jesus had his own particular way of doing it, like every person would. So to me, after the resurrection, when Jesus is walking along the road to Emmaus, the two disciples he's walking with, they don't recognize him. They don't know who he is. Until they go into the house that evening, food is served, and he takes the bread and he gives the blessing and breaks it and gives it to them. Instantly, they knew who he was. It could be true that God lifted the veil from their eyes, but it could be when they heard and saw him give that blessing. Just like here, when he fed the 5,000, the very same one, it all came back to them and they knew who he was. Now it says that there was 12 baskets full. You don't think, well, these big bushel baskets. Well, the Jewish people, actually they were actually kidded about this among the Gentiles. They would on their person, they would carry this basket. Now they could put food in there, but they would put hay in this basket because they did not want to take a journey. Every time they would take a journey, they would carry this basket of hay because they didn't want to defile themselves by being stuck of having to sleep in a home of a Gentile family or in any way have to associate. So they would take this hay so they could just lay down and sleep in a cave or alongside the road, and that they would be comfortable. More than likely, this is the basket that is being talked about. Interesting, in the feeding of 4,000, it also talks about baskets, but it actually is a different word. And for the life of me, I don't know the difference between the two baskets, but it's just interesting. So there's 5,000 men. Well, there could have been some women there too, more than likely was, but not probably as many as there were men. People would estimate there would be between 10 and 15,000 people there. Probably not. Closer to the 5,000. This was something that men would go to. Some women, but if there were women there, they would not be among the men. They would have their own location. They would have their own area where the women and the smaller children would be. The young men would be with their fathers. Well, so many little details with these stories. Come back next week when we give you more insights on the story of the week. We'll see you next week.